up here too. It's just too much stuff right here. I mean, maybe if we cleaned up some of this crap and moved stuff back, I don't know.
When I first saw this, I thought it was something to put my drinks
Of course, if it spills, we're all electric here.
Move forward, then I could have
Some
room to do my
Absolutely.
paperwork and shit.
Yep.
Ready? You ready? Good morning. Welcome everybody to the City Commission regular meeting. We're calling this meeting to order. I do want to let people know that the proclamations are at 4 o'clock. Those are time sensitive, so we will not get to those till 4 o'clock. If you're waiting on the proclamations, that's when we'll do with those. You may want to come back. But we are going to get started here. Those present are Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks, Commissioner Carasone, Commissioner Emmerich, City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton, Assistant City Clerk Heather Taylor, and Police Chief is not here, but the Deputy Chief is there in the back. We got Chief Titus back there also. If we could, we have an invocation by Pastor Jared Gritton. If we could stand for the invocation, please. Followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's pray.
Our Father, we come to you today, and first of all, Father, we want to give you thanks for this land in which we live. We thank you for the peace and the prosperity which you have given to us by your grace. Father, we thank you for the law and order under which we live, and Lord, for this government in Northport that you have provided. And Lord, it's our desire today, as we pray, we ask you to grant wisdom. Lord, you're the God of all wisdom, and I pray that for every decision that's made, that you would grant your wisdom, that it would be supplied in abundance. Father, for the areas of disagreement today, we pray for your grace. Lord, that those decisions would still come to accomplish your will, and Lord, that those disagreements will be carried out in an honoring way to you. Father, in all these things, we thank you for this day. We pray for thy will to be done here on earth as it is in heaven. We thank you for the blood of Jesus, which gives us access to make these requests this morning. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me.
If I can get an approval of the agenda, please.
Mayor?
Yes?
In light of all of the public comments regarding the Northport's utility building, item 7A, I'd like to move item 7A to after number 3.
Where's 7A?
I'll second.
I have a motion on the floor by the Vice Mayor to move item 7A after item 3A. Seconded by Commissioner Luke. Yes. Commissioner.
You said something about the utility building?
No, not 7A. You want the utility building. That's 7B.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, my
All right.
apologies. Yeah,
Change that to B.
Don't mess with the blonde now.
it's actually 6B.
I've got
Wait, which,
7B.
I might have a outdated agenda. Hang on, guys. 7B. I apologize, 7B.
That's okay.
Can we move 7B to after number 3?
Clerk, we good there? All right, let's take the vote.
Thank you.
Approval of the agenda, moving item 7B.
After 3,
After 3A, yes, ma'am.
not getting a...
All right, that motion passes unanimously. Want to move on to announcements. Assistant City Clerk.
The current vacancies for the following boards and committees include the Art Advisory Board, Audit Committee, Beautification and Tree Scenic Highway Committee, Charter Review Advisory Board, Citizens Tax Oversight Committee, Community Economic Development Advisory Board, Environmental Advisory Board, Historic and Cultural Advisory Board, Joint Management Advisory Board, Northport Youth Council, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, Public Utilities Advisory Board, and Zoning Board of Appeals. The upcoming expiration for the following advisory boards and committees: Art Advisory Board, Beautification and Tree Scenic Highway Committee, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Police Pension Board of Trustees, and Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. There's a position for one Northport resident to serve on the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization's Tamiami Trail Scenic Highway Committee. If anyone would like more information, please see the city clerk's office. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to item 3, welcome of new employees. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll introduce our Human Resources Director, Christine McDade, so she can go through the list of new employees.
Good morning, everyone. For the record, Christine McDade, Human Resources Director. It's my pleasure to introduce some of our newest team members here at the city. When I call your name, if you'll please stand. At the Police Department, we have Robert Anderson, a Community Service Officer. Walter Pern, Community Service Officer. Alexa Christensen, Public Safety Telecommunicator. Carl Hockman, Public Safety Telecommunicator as well. And finally, from that group, we have Megan Ward, Public Safety Telecommunicator. From Public Works, we have Steven Snyder. He's an emergency vehicle technician. Welcome. Colin Bannon, solid waste refuse equipment operator. James Kellner, also a solid waste refuse equipment operator. We have Jason Deloria, equipment operator 1. Lou Riccardi, equipment operator 1. And finally, Mario Romo, equipment operator 1. So on behalf of the city, it's my pleasure to officially welcome you and wish you much success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 7B, as per the motion. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll invite our Utilities Department and their consultant down so that we can go over the item as presented on here, which was designed to help find a new administrative location for our utilities headquarters. And I'll let them go through their presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. For the record, I am your Utilities Director, Rick Newkirk. And we're here today to present you with our presentation on our new facility administration building compound. And I know we don't have a lot of time to do it, so with me today I've got Tim Hancock from Stantec and Stephen McCachran from Stantec. And I will turn the presentation over to Tim right now so we can get through it in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Yeah, 15 minutes, sir.
Good morning, sir, and I'll do my best to squeeze it in under 10. My name is Tim Hancock. I'm with Stantec. Also with me is the project manager, Stephen McCachran. Stephen, in addition to being the project manager, is also a resident of Northport. If you're not familiar with Stantec, we're a worldwide architecture and engineering firm, over 22,000 employees, but more importantly, we have 13 offices here in Florida. The services that we're providing for you at this part of the project are provided mainly out of our Sarasota and Naples offices. Quickly, I'm going to review with you today the scope of work we have been engaged to do, the site selection criteria that we have undergone so far, the process itself, our recommendation, and what the next steps may be. The City of Northport Utility Administration is, to be gentle, a tired facility. It is located on a piece of property that is not under the full control of the city. And what we're looking is not just over the next few years, but the next 20, 30, 50 years for the needs of the city utilities. We have been engaged to perform the following steps. Number one, site analysis and selection, and that is the purpose of today's presentation to you. We've already begun architectural programming, which is a way of saying we're going to right-size the building to the needs of the utility, not just today, but in the future. We then go into site layout and preliminary design. How do the buildings fit on the site? How do we relate to our neighbors? What are the good neighbor policies that will be implemented to make sure that the project is compatible? We then go into site permitting. That's where we obtain from both local, state, and if necessary, federal jurisdictions, all necessary permits for the project. We execute final building design, and then we'll provide bidding and construction administration services. The initial site selection criteria, we chose to cast a very broad net initially. We looked at the needs of the utility and determined that a minimum of 10 net acres would be required, 15 acres would be preferred. We looked at the proposed uses, including utility administration, small equipment repair, a laydown yard, communication antenna, while not overly high, it still is an antenna, generators, fuel storage, and equipment storage on site. In reviewing the City of Northport zoning categories, there are only 3 zoning categories that permit those uses in sum or in whole. That is PCD, government use, and industrial light warehousing, light industrial warehousing. So using that criteria, we created basically a round 1 set of parcel maps. All parcels meeting the minimum size criteria and zoning criteria were mapped, totaling 107 parcels throughout the city. In meeting with Northport utility staff, each parcel was discussed. We developed through that process what we deemed to be exclusionary criteria. For example, many of the sites appeared vacant, but might have been used for dry detention for an adjacent parcel, so they were excluded. If there was not water and sewer available to the site, it's kind of a deal breaker for a public utility building to have water and sewer. So we looked at access issues and constraints as well, irregular shape, flood zone, and so forth. If any of these things were deal killers, the projects or the parcels were dropped off. What that did is it took our initial list of 107 and actually brought us down to 15 sites. The key exclusionary criteria was not being central to the primary service area for the utility customers. Doesn't do us a lot of good to have a utility administration function way out east when most of the customers are just central and west. So we then took each of those remaining 15 parcels and we fine-tuned it. We created a property data sheet for each of the 15 that included information and zoned in on things such as flood zone protection. We know we are in a vulnerable area. Existing grade and elevation are key. So many of those parcels, 3 of them in fact, were basically dropped out because of flood zone concerns. After going through an additional level of detail, we still had 12 parcels remaining that were subject to what we developed as a scoring matrix. So how do we score them? First of all, proximity to the core service area. Again, not just for the employees, but for the customers, this is a key item. Secondly, hurricane zones. Further away you are from the coast, the better. Absence of known environmental issues. In other words, if there's a biodiversity hotspot, that's a bad deal. If we have evidence that we have previous permitting or clearing on the site, that's a good thing. Ease of access. The current site is sandwiched between 2 school zones. That's not good for utility operations. It's generally something you want to try and avoid. Availability of water and sewers we discussed. Proximity to residential. In other words, is it bordered on one side by residential, 2 or more, and then flood zones. We took all 12 parcels, established the scoring criteria, and applied the scoring. What you can see here were the top 3 ranked parcels from the 12 that remained from the original 107. The main differentiator you can see in the first column, proximity to service area, there were only 3 parcels that were in near proximity to the core service area for the City of Northport utility customers. As a result, we brought these 3 to a meeting with the city manager and discussed them in more detail. After presenting that, and you can see here, this is a map of the 3 parcels. They're all in fairly similar locations with regard to proximity to each other. After discussing the scoring results, parcel number 39 was taken out due to compatibility issues and being located within the Heron Creek Activity Center. That left 2 parcels for continued consideration. So for the remaining parcels, we had to perform the next step of investigation, getting off the desktop, which is number 1. Are the owners willing sellers? Number 2, if so, is there an established sales price? What is the financial or fiscal impact to the city? 3, let's look at the land use issues on each parcel and identify any zoning issues. This is not an exhaustive list, but these were the minimum criteria we needed to be able to come back to you and make a recommendation. So let's go through the 2 remaining parcels in a little more detail. Number 1, the parcel number 43 on Pan American Boulevard. It totals 47.11 acres, far larger than what we need, but giving some flexibility. It is available for purchase either in its entirety or in part. The pricing is flexible, meaning if you are closer to Pan American Boulevard, which may have a better retail component, it would be $6 a foot. If you're back off the roadway, it would be $3 a foot. And by the way, I want to thank Ashley Bloom and the owners on this property for being very willing to work with us and providing information. And what they had discussed with us is, in order to get 15 net acres, if you have to provide some wetland mitigation, it requires an additional acre, they would provide that mitigation at no additional cost. It is near existing water and wastewater plants. It has access onto Pan American, which can be poor at times due to background traffic on that roadway. Potable water, wastewater, and reclaimed water service is available. We do have residential adjacency on both the north and the south. Additional considerations is the access. While we do have access on Pan American, it would require an internal service road and extension of utilities to be provided. The proximity to Myakkahatchee Creek and the known presence of wetlands and gopher tortoise on the site do represent permitting hurdles. They are not unsurmountable, but they are hurdles nonetheless, which usually add both time and cost to any property. Floodplain compensation may be required, again, due to proximity to the floodplain. The site has been previously permitted for development, but its existing environmental resource permit has expired. It would have to be reapplied for. And depending on the final site location, residential adjacencies could be minimized or mitigated for. We then looked at parcel 107, Talon Bay Drive. This parcel is 18 acres in total. The entire parcel is being offered for sale. The pricing, again, these are conversations with the property owners. Again, the property owner was very forthcoming, but would be willing to sell the entire 18 acres at approximately $1.50 per square foot. This is anywhere from 25% to 50% of the cost of the Pan American parcel. Off-site utility improvements would be limited. This site had the unique advantage of having a lift station that was constructed near the site that was oversized at the time to accommodate this parcel. What that means is that we would not have to construct a lift station on this site and probably would be able to use gravity feed from the site to the lift station, which lowers the development cost significantly. The site is previously disturbed. In 2001, and then also at the time of the environmental resource permit, it was mentioned that the entire 2/3 southern portion of this had been cleared previously and was then used for agricultural purposes. What that means from a permitting standpoint is when you have a previously cleared or disturbed site, the permitting process can be much smoother and much less expensive. It doesn't mean that it hasn't been recolonized by a particular species, but at this point we have no reason to believe that's the case. As a matter of fact, the previous permit, while it showed wetlands on the larger parcel, did not show wetlands on this parcel and had no indication of the presence of protected species. Additional considerations are that traffic volumes on Talon Bay Drive are fairly low. They are predominantly residential in nature, which has to be taken into consideration. Reclaimed water is not available. That service is anticipated in the near future. Residential adjacencies here cannot be avoided, but they can be mitigated through good neighbor design. We do facilities like this all over the U.S. In addition to positive architecture, which is key for any public facility, we design them for the next 50 years, not just for tomorrow. The other key component is looking at compatibility. How can we position, buffer, and locate uses so as not to disturb the quiet peace that current residents have? And we'll be talking about that a little bit more. We took the two parcels, and I just gave you an overview, and we put them into the matrix and did a straight comparison. The bottom line is there are about 4 or 5 differentiating points between these two parcels. Number one, parcel 43, the Pan American parcel, does have known species present. The gopher tortoise on the site. We don't know if they have spread throughout the site, but we know they're there. We do have a map based on the expired permit, but there are going to be environmental impacts with that parcel. Parcel 107, near the upsized lift station, will reduce site infrastructure costs. Parcel 43, on the other hand, has reclaimed water currently available, but 107 will have it in the near future. Parcel 107 will have a lower infrastructure cost due to not having to extend an access drive. It's going to be significantly less expensive on the initial purchase price, again, anywhere between half as much to as little as 25% of the cost of the Pan American piece. And there's also, parcel 43 does allow for more options. This is the one thing I'll say about the Pan American parcel. While the Talon Bay Drive parcel is, in a word, cleaner, the Pan American site does allow for the flexibility of additional lands should the city wish to acquire more than just the utility site. So that falls in the Pan American side. But as you cull these out, you get a strength on the Talon Bay parcel, which resulted in our recommendation. Before getting into the good neighbor approach, I want to share with you a little bit about this piece. Basically, we are here today seeking your direction to either identify one of these two parcels as a parcel to proceed with acquisition, or if there are other questions or concerns you have, we certainly want to try and address those today. Let me share with you a concept. When you start talking about a utility administration building, naturally the public's concerns raise. The ire gets up. Oh no, this is going to be an industrial use. There's going to be noise all the time. Okay, these are natural. If I were in the homes next to the site, I would have those same concerns. What we do under a good neighbor policy is before we really start doing the site planning, number one, check your surroundings. Who is it we need to preserve and protect in the city of Northport? This parcel is bordered on one side by residential and a portion of a second side by residential as well. As you can see from the drawing that's up here, there are very simple techniques. This is South Florida. We have to have water management. Why not use the lake as a buffer? Create distance between any future buildings that are on the site and the residences that are on two sides of the site. Number two, buffering. One thing we love about Florida is just about everything grows here, and it grows fast. So by putting increased buffering in, you can actually reduce site impacts. But let's be clear, this site has got 2 or 3 different uses on it. The administration building is nothing more than an office function for the most part. It has comings and goings similar to an office. This parcel, as well as the Pan American parcel, both are located within an activity center. Both are zoned CPD. Both allow for and are consistent with and could be developed tomorrow with commercial and light industrial uses. This is not a use that is well outside the box of what was considered in your comp plan and your zoning documents. We will have to go through a rezone on either parcel for one reason, and that's outdoor storage. Outdoor storage is a use that is limited within all but 1 or 2 of your activity centers, and it also requires, as it should, increased buffering from neighbors. What we've done here is we have proposed conceptually that any storage that would occur on the north portion of the property. Any maintenance functions that would occur on the north portion of the property away from residential, where we can buffer those homes to a far greater extent. What I want to convey to you today is, while we are talking about site selection, we are not blind to what is going on around us. Our approach going forward with whichever site is selected will be to put together a plan, to meet with the neighbors, to discuss increased compatibility. These are good neighbor policies that are part and parcel of everything that we do. So while today I ask you to look at these 2 parcels from a site selection standpoint, I ask you to also recognize that we also want to be that good neighbor. Utility department wishes to be the good neighbor and to go forward hand in hand with the residents and create something that's both compatible and consistent with what is in your zoning code today. With that, I will be happy to address any questions you may have, and I think I did come in under the 10 minutes if I'm not mistaken.
You're close.
Okay.
You're close. Commissioner Emmerich.
This probably goes to Rick. Your staffing that's over there off of Price, is that all moving with this building? So you're going to be working out of that building with your staff and everything? So if we got a water main going off at 2 o'clock in the morning, everybody's going to be mobilizing out of there, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You're saying that over on Talon Bay, it's good because it's got an updated lift station and everything for your choosing, but you're right across from the wastewater plant on Pan American. So wouldn't that be a prime opportunity to hook up to as well?
Well, there's no, sir, there's no lift station to pump it to the gravity system on the Pan American site. There's no gravity in the area, so there would have to be a lift station put in to get it to the gravity system to get it to the wastewater plant.
Okay, so even being that close, you would have to put in a lift
Right.
station.
You remember, the old saying is, it runs downhill, so.
But I'm just saying, there's no way for it to go over into the process, but all the other surrounding buildings are hooked up over there to the sewer system.
Yes,
Okay, so there's no other tie-in except for having a lift station.
that is correct.
Okay. And my other question is, and then I can pass it on to somebody else, but your Pan Am, you're saying you got 47.11 acres of acquirable land over there to put this project in. That was on your slide there. The other one said that Talon Bay was 18 acres. So basically, if Talon Bay was chosen, you're gonna fit it all in that little basket. But you have flexibility over off of Pan Am to pick and choose exactly where this facility to go within those 47 acres, because that's 3 times the size of property, correct?
If I may, yes, sir. You do have more flexibility. However, Pan Am does have 2 identified jurisdictional wetlands on it, which will give some limitation as to whether you want to locate in or near those wetlands and take on those impacts.
Right, but there is flexibility.
There is more flexibility on the Pan Am side as far as where you locate, remembering you do have residential to the north and the south as well, but yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I got for now. I may come back again, but thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you for the presentation. In your PowerPoint, the very last slide that had the conceptual layout of where the building would go and stuff, do you have one of those for Pan Am?
I was gonna ask that myself. But
No, ma'am, we do not, because it was difficult to understand exactly where would be the most suitable location on the Pan Am site because of the wetlands and the gopher tortoises that are present. There currently also is, I think, 7 acres of that site are either under contract or being discussed at this time. And where those 7 acres are is exactly where I would want to put the utility uses. So there were a little too many variables. This site was a little bit cleaner from trying to understand where it could go.
Can you put the picture of the layout of the Pan Am site up on the screen? Because this is such an odd shaped. Thank you.
Commissioner, you know what? These are very old aerials too.
No, and I
so-
understand they're old aerials, and I understand
Real
everything
old.
is conceptual. But there was talk of Children's Way. Is that going to be if you can use your cursor to show where thank you. Is that where the proposed major entrance and exit is going to be used, is on Children's Way? Is that the plan, or are you talking about using Pan American?
It should be Children's Way for 2 reasons. Number one, right below Children's Way, where I'm showing right here, is a significant wetland. So getting around it is a little on the difficult side. So Children's Way would be the ideal entry point. Secondly is that if we were to come in directly off Pan American into the site, that means we would have the site located closer to Pan American, which has a significantly higher purchase price. So we either would be using Children's Way or creating a secondary access point which would bisect the frontage on Pan American, and my guess is that's going to have some cost implications.
Okay, so right where you have your little cursor, just to like the northwest of there, right there, is that the wetland?
That is one of the wetlands. There's a second wetland area in this portion of the site, and the documented gopher tortoises are in this portion of the site. So that's why I say this area up here would be the ideal area if I could locate anywhere on the site while we are adjacent to residential on the north here. That would at least get us away from some of the environmental concerns and issues.
Okay. I haven't heard too much about dollars. And I know this is preliminary negotiations, but just a worst case scenario, best case scenario, what are we talking about cost for purchasing the one off Talon Bay and the one off of Pan American? Just general.
I kind of did the math, Vice Mayor. 107 at $1.05 is 1.1 million.
But he was also saying we may not purchase the entire parcel.
No, that was 107. So 107, I think you'd be purchasing the whole parcel, wouldn't you? It looked like.
Yes, 107 would be an acquisition of the entire parcel. We need about 15 net acres. The parcel is 18 acres. The remainder 3 acres to the landowner is not of, put it this way, he wants to sell all 18. And so that acquisition also gives us an additional acreage to provide more buffering to the residential going forward, because we don't need the full 18 acres, we just need 15. So to give you some round numbers, the Pan American site, and again, these were not, I want to be very, very clear, I have not on behalf of the city of Northport negotiated anything. I do not have that authority nor that direction from you. What I did is made phone calls to property owners and asked if they had a listing price and were they willing to sell, so that we could at least have that conversation today. On the Pan American parcel, the price range for a net 15 acres would range between $3 and $6 a foot. So let's take the $3 a foot number. That works out to be just under $2 million. The Talon Bay parcel, again, the price I was quoted, is $1.50 a foot. That's $1 million less. And on the Pan American parcel, if you were to take some of the frontage, that number doubles for that square footage. So instead of 2 million, if you were to locate entirely along the frontage, it would be 4 million. Now, those are broad numbers given by the property owners. So again, I want to be very clear. They are for reference purposes at this time, and then they would have to be subject to further negotiation.
Wait, I'm confused, that you're saying the Pan American is 2 million, well, a little bit less than 2 million for all 43?
No, he's talking about.
No, ma'am.
They would not
15
purchase
acres.
the whole 43, they would purchase minimum of 15.
Now, if you want to buy all 43, I've been told they'll cut you a deal.
Right.
You know, but they're looking at it from their standpoint as well. The frontage on Pan American has greater value, therefore it has a price of $6 a foot. The back piece with lesser value, and also used to begin toying with some of the environmental concerns back there, has a lower value.
So if we were to consider purchasing the entire parcel for Pan Am, obviously round number, what would be fair as far as an idea of dollar-wise?
I'm trying to recall the conversation I had with Mr. Bloom, and I want to say it was somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million.
We'll call it 3 just for,
But please allow me to put an
Absolutely.
asterisk next to that.
Absolutely.
Because it was a question, but not necessarily something we were looking at. We made no assumption that the city all of a sudden decided they wanted 47 acres.
For the total 47 acres? The 3 million?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, please, I don't.
Approximately. No, I'm not holding you to it. You don't have to come up with the rest.
I'm just a planner.
so Talon Bay, the road, and I don't know if you can answer this or if staff or city attorney, I've been a stickler about this portion that's under private ownership. How is that moving forward? What's going on with it? Because that may impact a decision to be made here today.
Just from our research, there is an access easement over that roadway that provides the utility with access to and from the parcel. So there does not need to be any turnover, over of the roadway. It was platted and has an access easement over it.
Thank you. Children's Way, same thing. In the map, it looks like it's owned in private. Just would like to double check ownership of Children's Way.
Our initial investigation as well is that it has an access easement over it for the sole purpose of providing access to the rear of the property. And again, you may see some of the parcels that fell out were because we couldn't confirm access, or there was a parcel in between. These two parcels, we did look at access, and from the available public records determined that both parcels had public access.
Excellent. And assuming the city maintains both streets, maintenance, the city manager, do we maintain Children's Way?
I believe we do, but I'm not positive off the top of my head.
And are we still currently maintaining Talon Bay?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I know others have many, many questions. I'll yield the floor, but if we could please come back.
Yep, I'll come back around one more time. Commissioner Carson.
Yeah, if we can get that aerial up of Pan American one more time. Is there any way to zoom in on that property?
From my end, that's about the best I can do.
That's the best we can do, okay. Where is it that the 7 acres are, you said, under contract or in negotiations? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am. It is this section right here.
It's for affordable housing.
Okay, so you see where Outreach Way is? Have you considered that as your access point versus Children's Way? Because we own that.
We have not, because I did not see an access easement from Outreach Way directly to this property. So I focused on Children's Way, but it's certainly something we could look at a little bit further.
Well, if you're purchasing the property, can't you create the access easement?
You can for parcel 43, but if there is a gap between parcel 43 and the termination of Outreach Way, it would have to be addressed. But I'll be honest, ma'am, we need to look at that a little closer.
So it wasn't looked at, basically?
Not in depth, no. ma'am.
Okay.
Part of that was because that property right there might be used by somebody else, and they will not give us necessarily an access from
You
Outreach.
talking
right?
about quality healthcare?
Yeah, that's the.
That's
retirement.
quality healthcare.
The acres that you just said that are looking to be bought by somebody else go right up to the edge there. If they put
Oh,
a
I
housing
see.
development there, we can't get through their affordable housing development to get to the property.
So that's behind Children's First. I guess it depends on what
happens
they're
with-
doing with that property because, and is it purchased? I mean,
It's not yet, but they're
Yeah,
looking, the
so-
plan is for affordable housing to go there, and they're probably gonna design it in a way would not want utilities coming right through the middle of the housing project.
okay, well,
But we don't know at this point, but
Yeah, we don't
that's the
know,
reason why
so.
you don't have may not have access to that.
right. Okay, so when you talk about the Pan Am site, what are you talking about location as far as building then?
Assuming the 7 acres here were to be acquired and developed, Children's Way would extend along the southern edge of that. So that kind of makes our entry point right about here. Ideally, you would want to put the acreage up here, avoiding the Gopher Tortoise area down here, and extending to the south, avoiding the wetlands down here. So this area right here becomes the most efficient next piece, if you would, for development.
Right,
Katona.
yep, right by Katona.
And if we go to the south, for example, if we were to elongate or L-shape
Well,
this way,
it's not really by
we end up again adjacent to, I believe it's an assisted living community here.
Yeah, but those are very large, 3-story buildings. Nobody's going to see anything. I mean, that's less of an impact than Katona.
And regardless of where we go, the Public Utility Administration building, it hasn't been determined if it's 1 stories or 2. But one of the reasons I kind of like 2-story administration buildings is that they act as a buffer and shield themselves. So you can use them to buffer both sight lines and any potential noise coming from adjacent parts of the site.
Okay, next question is, what about the future? You know, we're looking at this area, which is great because it's centrally located, but, you know, ultimately, as we expand our water and sewer system, we're going further east, not just west. And so are we looking at a secondary site? And I guess maybe this is more of a Rick question, but if this is just one of many sites, then do we really have to worry about the growth of this site? Or is this the site and then we'll only have one more and it'll be on the far east end? What's the
Well,
plan?
as you know, right now, up in the West Villages, we are in the process of completing a wastewater treatment facility up there that possibly could be used for something. We will be getting ready for the design of a new water treatment plant up in that area, which possibly could be taken into consideration because we've already have that property and the location. Also, we have land out in the Panacea area, out of the Toledo Blade area, for another wastewater and water treatment facility out there that, if the need be, we could have, per se, like satellite offices at either one of those 2 locations in the future.
Wasn't Panacea site one of those places considered for this?
There were a couple sites in the Panacea area, but if I remember correctly, right now they're not served by water and sewer. Most of the areas around there are still on septic. It was an activity center, I believe, in there that the zoning was present, but they were not served by water and sewer.
So yet again, how does that handle our future, I guess is what, we'd have to rezone that, we'd have to do the same thing. You see, I don't like doing things twice, but, you know, either we're gonna do it right the first time, or we're gonna come back here in 5 years and say, well, now we need Panacea. Well, if Panacea was the area we were looking at to address this need and possibly a need of the future, well, then wouldn't that make the best sense of your use of monies?
The work that we're doing is actually building on a study previously done by another consultant that looked at the future needs of the utility department.
How long ago?
About 8 years ago.
Yeah. 8 years ago.
Yes, ma'am. Most of that time since then was in the recession. We actually saw the growth numbers drop. but they're now coming back up. But nonetheless, we're not looking at this site for a 10 or 15-year window. We do believe a 15 net acre site can serve the utilities for much longer than that.
Commissioner, if I may speak, right now, the area that we're on now, and, you know, we're stuffed in there right now.
Oh, we know.
But that's 3 acres. So, and the study that Tim was referring to was done for the build-out of the city in the future. So I know it was done 8 years ago, but when they looked at it, it took into consideration the build-out of the city.
Complete build-out?
Yes.
I guess I just don't understand how if you're going to put something on, let's just say it's Talon Bay, how is that going to service people who live all the way out in Yorkshire or San Mateo? You know, I mean, theoretically, that's wonderful, but realistically, it's not so convenient.
Well, we're doing it right now from the facility that we're at. Probably, in my mind of thinking, that would be suitable to continue to do that. However, if with the population growth in both those areas of town, I would consider putting a billing satellite office at those places, not the yard where our equipment would be stored, because we can dispatch that.
So are we going to do the same thing at West Villages? Just a satellite office?
They're just to receive payments, that would be a possibility. I have not got that far yet. A lot of people are doing everything online now, but we still have a lot of folks that like to come in and do that. It gives them things to do and get out. But that might be a way to go, to have where you could come and do your payments or ask some questions if you didn't want to do it online. I would definitely consider that at either one of the other 2 locations that the utility department already owns.
But the reason why I ask is because Talon Bay is so close to West Villages, essentially, compared to the rest. If you look at the city, you know, overall, they seem very close considering all the other parcels that were considered. So I just don't want to duplicate services, if you know what I mean.
We're still going to hold a cashiering office here at City Hall. That will remain. And the billing and everything else will be done at the new centralized administration compound.
I only have one question left and I'm done. The wetlands on Pan American, what is the amount of acres of wetlands compared to the 47 point whatever?
That number is not fresh in my mind. I want to say it's in the 10 to 15 total range. Also would like to, our team looked back at an email. The acquisition price for the totality of the Pan American parcel would be $3.8 million.
Closer to 4.
And that's
For
taking
everything.
out the 7 acres as well as the, reducing the amount of the wetland acreage?
That would, I believe, include the 7
wetlands.
acres, because I think that deal, if you will, has a duration. There's a decision point in this month on that, that we will know. But no, that price was the entire 47.11 acres, and it includes all of the wetlands of the remaining parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Luke?
I also spoke with Mr. Bloom, and he said that 7 acres is actually supposed to be separate from this larger parcel. I believe he said that in front of our city manager also, because of applying and trying to get the affordable housing to come in. I appreciate the study that you did. Very, very thorough, and I appreciate the methodology that you used going through it. It was very effective.
Thank you.
Just want to clarify, the 18 acres at the Talon Bay Drive location, we're only, according to what I was reading, we're only paying for 15. 3 are being given to us, correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
The whole piece goes at once. this is allowing us to put in that buffered area in the good neighbor policies, correct?
Yes, ma'am, it gave us the breathing room I feel was necessary.
Okay. Have a couple of questions. Really appreciated the residents from that area who wrote to us. And there's a couple of questions that one of them have that I would like to ask. And that is assuredly that the 35% canopy would stay in place on that property also, as is required by the city as a whole.
Yes, ma'am, all city codes will be followed. One of the issues with this property is that most of the existing vegetation is an exotic. It's Brazilian pepper. And so the site, once the Brazilian pepper is cleared out, will have a limited amount of remaining native canopy. But yes, ma'am, all city codes will be followed. And anywhere where we can save native vegetation in proximity to the residences, that certainly would be our recommendation as well.
Thank you. And right now, I mean, I'm very familiar with Talon Bay Drive, and it is a beautiful drive going back to that residential neighborhood. Would the trees and the scenery along that road stay as it is?
I would dare say we could maybe even make it a little bit better on the utility side. I think one of the important things is that as you come down that road, that view corridor be maintained and improved if possible. Right now, what you see on the right-hand side as you go down is actually predominantly exotics. So as those are cleared out, a replanting plan for those in what I would recommend is 2 to 3 strata of vegetation in the buffer along Talon Bay be utilized in order to really, maintain and actually improve the mature look of that.
Okay, and then a little concerned because I am familiar with that drive. The exits going in and out of the facility, would they have to do U-turns? Right now, there's only one area to do U-turns. It does rut up as you're turning and stuff. So would the access going in, the ingress and egress, change up the Talon Bay Drive?
No, ma'am. We would try and align our access points with the existing median cuts on Talon Bay Drive. Okay. If they cannot be aligned, then they would be used right in, right out only. But I think there are 2 openings along the frontage of the property on Talon Bay Drive, and those would be utilized without having to modify the medians on Talon Bay. There may be, we really don't even need to have an outbound turn lane. So no, ma'am, I don't, other than maybe a right turn lane into the site to get turning movement off of Talon Bay Drive so residential vehicles can pass, I don't see need for any real significant modifications to Talon Bay Drive.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Vice Mayor.
Did you have questions, ma'am? Okay. I just have a few follow-up questions. Could you please put up the picture of the conceptual plan for Talon Bay? Okay, so this, it appears that there's a median that will have to be reconfigured.
No, ma'am, and that's why the previous comment is, we put this together basically just as a conceptual plan.
Right.
But that entry point would be moved over to this location right here where you actually have an existing opening.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I can't imagine the trucks turning around with a trailer possibly.
No, ma'am, that was, a lot of sites were actually taken off the board because that's a bad idea. Here, that would not be required. The main purpose of this was really to kind of give an illustration as to how buildings and lakes and whatnot can be used as buffers to maintain the peace and quiet of the residential neighborhood and the adjacencies.
I too received a lot of emails from our citizens about this, and the biggest concern that I gathered from that is the traffic that this utilities yard would create. I think there might be, and I can't speak for the citizens, but there might be a misperception because we have the 2 yards on Price Boulevard. One is the Public Works yard, which is big, heavy equipment, and this utilities yard is a little bit more pickup trucks, maybe vans and stuff. Maybe since we have so many citizens from Talon Bay here, maybe the director, Mr. Newkirk, could kind of give an overview of how much traffic this will, what's it going to look like for them? Because they probably don't see it on Price Boulevard.
Yeah, you drive right by.
Because you
It's
just
only-
drive right by it
only
because there's
3
nothing
acres.
going on. But what does a typical day look like for utilities?
And before Rick steps up to answer that question, let me also tell you, when you look at the actual trip generation or traffic generator from a utility site such as this, on a 18-acre site, if this were to be developed, for example, with an office building, which is currently zoned for, or light industrial, which is transportation-based, the traffic that would be generated from the site would be far in excess of what a utility generates. And of course, as a part of zoning, that traffic impact statement would be presented to you, but the bottom line is that the utility is on weekends, unless there's an emergency, it's quiet. Evenings, it's quiet. And the trip generation on a daily basis is significantly lower than a commercial project of the same acreage in this location. But as far as to what the traffic looks like, I'll let Mr. Newkirk address that.
Rick Newkirk. Yeah, our crews, we start, our hours of operation are 7 to 3:30. The crews are usually all out of the gate by 7:30 in the morning, and they start returning anywhere between 3 and 3:15 in the afternoon. There are very rare trips to come back to the office, to the warehouse to pick up materials, because the object is to load up your materials either the evening before or the morning before your trip out. And our deliveries that we get, we do not receive deliveries every single day. We order our deliveries, and we probably get deliveries that come in either by UPS, a lot of them come in, unless we're getting in some pipes and some valves and things, and they will come in on 18-wheelers. And they are there, and they are scheduled to be there no later than 2:30 in the afternoon. Otherwise, we just don't have enough time to accommodate them to get unloaded. And they do not get there before 8 o'clock in the morning also. So the traffic in and out of the existing facility is rather light. Right now, our biggest issue with the property that we have is when school is starting in the morning. Sometimes you're waiting to get out of the gate for 5 to 10 minutes because of the backup of traffic, because of the proximity to the two schools. And that is the same way in the afternoons.
How many employees do you have out of that building, sir?
50?
50? And not all of them are going out on the road?
No.
No. Okay.
And I believe 50 would, it probably wouldn't, Vice Mayor, it's probably not even 50 because several of those employees work at the water and wastewater treatment facilities. Okay. And then we still got employees here, so let me knock that down to 35.
Okay, so 35 are currently, a safe guess, at the
Safe
yard
guess.
that would then transfer over there. So it's not like hundreds and there's not
No, no, ma'am.
There's not like the Public Works yard is a completely different animal. This sounds like it's much more subdued.
Yeah. I myself personally am probably in and out of that facility more than any employee because of running to all the different facilities that we have for the water and wastewater plants and our office here at City Hall.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I hope that information is helpful for the citizens too.
Madam Vice Mayor, if I may add one more
Go
thing
ahead.
to that. One of the things, if the folks who live in the area haven't thought of it yet, they need to know that it should be addressed in any plan going forward, and that is backup alarms. When we look at utility sites, particularly when they are in near proximity to any residential neighborhoods, what you want to do is you want to design the site with as many routes around the site and pull-throughs as possible to eliminate or minimize backup alarms because they're
Beep,
annoying.
beep, beep
None of
alarms?
us like them.
Okay.
And so we did a site design for a 155-acre resource recovery business park that was handling, the mulching of material and so forth. And we actually were able to create about 90% of the activity in a circular and pull-through manner to really minimize backup alarms. So that's something that this site, having a few more acres, allows us to do that as well.
That's good information. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't even think of that. Awesome. Going to the page that has the 3 sites selected. Marsh Creek Holdings, the one that's over by Heron Creek. It says here that the parcel 39 was removed due to compatibility issues. What does that mean in layman's terms?
From our standpoint, that particular parcel, when you look at the total number of residences, not just immediately adjacent to, but near proximity, was on the high end. Whereas when you look at both Pan American and Talon Bay, yes, there are adjacent residences, but the total number within a near proximity was significantly lower. We also got some good counsel from the city manager on that parcel as well, and through that discussion, we just felt that of the three, it clearly was the lowest of the three, and going forward, we focused on the other two.
Because going to Commissioner Carasone's point for future growth, that's more centrally located. It's close to City Hall, and it's on two main thoroughfares. It seemed like a more viable second option, and based on, compared to the Pan American, which has all of these little caveats that have to be under consideration. So
one of the things the Talon Bay site, and it doesn't show up in the numbers, but that it really kind of jumped out at me was, even the Pan American site down here, if you leave that site and you go north, you're going to be traversing a predominantly residential area, and where you're going to end up, you're going to end up right back in the school zones.
Exactly.
To the north. This site has some of those similar characteristics. To get out of it, you're going to be going through areas that have a high degree of residential traffic. The Talon Bay site has a very short distance, and you're right at 41. So you can pick more well-traveled routes to get to other locations within the city. Again, not a significant mark, but one that I think just gives a little more of a tip in the way we looked at the Talon Bay site.
I was more leaning towards that Heron Creek one being more of the second option as opposed to Pan American, for the reasons that you stated. You're just going back into what you're trying to get out of at Pan American. Let's see, is there internet out by Talon Bay?
Yes, ma'am. We checked both Pan American and Talon Bay do have all of the utility requirements that would be necessary.
In the backup materials, it stated that there is something about a communications tower, or a SCADA, whatever that, SCADA? SCADA.
Yes, and this is not a cell tower. It's much lower than that. But SCADA is basically your telemetry system for your pump stations throughout the city. They let the utility department know when a pump station is either going offline or having trouble so that they can service it. So you just need to have a small communication tower. Your code does not differentiate between small communication towers and large ones necessarily, so that's another use that you know, kind of contributes to having to go through the rezoning process on that.
And the SCADA, is that what you called it, SCADA tower? How tall is that about?
It's under 50 feet.
Under 50 feet.
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
I think, once we pick a location, ballpark, when are you expecting to break ground? I know there's a lot of things that have to happen between now and breaking ground, but just for general information, approximate. 10 years, 5 years, 2 years?
Oh, no, ma'am. If we took 5 years to do this, we'd get fired in year 2.
You'd think.
No, our goal is to move forward as quickly and reasonably as possible. So the process from here looks like this. Hopefully we get direction from you today on a preferred site to proceed with acquisition. We then go deeper into the building programming and begin working on the building programming in the next stage while the acquisition is going on, because that programming can land on any site. We would probably wait to start doing the detailed site layout until we know that we have an acquisition in hand and we know what our parent tract is going to be. That's where also we would engage with the neighbors, begin talking about mitigation and strategies as well, and then we would finalize the site plan. Once that's done, we go directly into site civil engineering as well as building design. All of that combined, depending on the processes, can be anywhere from 18 to 24 months, at which point you have a site permit available and can start turning dirt. That is a little aggressive, but that's how we like to set our targets, and I'd rather see 24 months slip to 25 than 36 be 36.
Thank you for that. And Mayor, I do believe that's all of my questions.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Emmerich.
Is there going to be a billing center, like a payment center at this new facility with your admin, just like you do down at the regular utility building? I know you have one here, you're planning satellites, but is this going to be a billing center as well with traffic coming in and out during the day for residents, whichever site we pick?
Commissioner, that's a good question. There could be a possibility of that. I have not gone into that far. I know we're gonna have it, keep the one here at City Hall, which everyone is accustomed to.
But don't they pay down at Price too?
No, they don't.
They don't do that anymore, okay.
No,
I know
sir,
they did
do
it back
not.
in my day when I worked there, but no
Then,
more,
yes,
okay.
yes,
That's
we-
why I
we-
asked.
We stopped that and centralized our cashiering department. So we no longer have that traffic. This facility here at City Hall, our drive-through does very good, and the citizens are very comfortable with it. But that's something, as we move forward with this, that we would consider. And my plan is to hopefully be in this building by 2021.
And again, I'm not putting that on you as a need that it has to happen. I'm not saying that, but I mean, down the road, if we're looking at our future, you may need that. But right now, I'm not saying that has to happen if everything's being built through City Hall and possible satellite offices.
Yeah, I like to keep security kind of like in one location.
No, that's fine. I was just asking because I'm looking at traffic as well, coming and going from the
Exactly.
building, especially throughout the day. You know, we talked about how it's low, but then again, if you're adding a billing center, then it would bump that up quite a bit, and you would have a lot of traffic out there.
That is correct.
That's all I had on that question, sir.
Commissioner Carusone?
Yeah, just a wrap up here. The Talon Bay site, is there any wetlands on there? Because it sure looks like it.
According to the 2008 permit issued by the South Florida Water Management District, there were no wetlands present on the Talon Bay site.
Okay. And then, but this was the place that was previously disturbed, so, okay.
Yes,
that
ma'am,
might
the
be
southern
what I'm
two-thirds
seeing.
was absolutely cleared according to a 2001
That's probably
aerial.
what I'm looking at
And I
then.
think the 04 aerial shows a tree farm on the site, and the tree farm is actually referenced in the district permit issued in 2008.
Okay, and then, this piece of property that we're looking at, on Pan American, that is zoned what?
Both parcels are zoned PCD, which
Okay.
means they just have to be consistent or are consistent with your activity center in that area.
Okay, so being PCD, let's just say that we don't purchase the 40 whatever acres it is now. Someone can come in, purchase those acres and build regardless of what the environmental impacts are, right? They can just mitigate the gopher tortoises, they can mitigate whatever they want, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay, Vice Mayor, let's take some public comments.
Okay. All right, Mayor, just so you know, there's some that have like, it appears that in an order that they want to speak. So if you could just take it from the top and work your way down. Thank you.
Okay, you have 3 minutes to speak. You'll head right over here to this officer, and the little long bar will be your microphone. Please state your name for the record when you get up there. Margaret Beswick. We'll call 3 at a time. Tricia Wallace, and you can line up there against the wall. And Lou LaGoyce.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Margaret Beswick. I live in the Talon Bay community. I'm very concerned about the storage part of the facility that's going to be used for chemicals and what environmental impact that might have if there is an incident of some sort. We are a small community, but we are very close-knit. We prefer our privacy down the drive. We don't want additional noise or traffic, certainly not at that hour in the morning. It's primarily a retirement community. If their trucks are moving in and out at before 7 a.m., I'm going to be up when I'm not supposed to be up, or usually up. These are the issues that I have. I also look at Pan American as already has a great deal of commercial property there, and this just would add to that, which to me, why disrupt what little we do have left in this community in natural resource to now start putting it into a commercial zoning area. That was what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. We know it's an exciting time. If we could keep the claps to a minimum, please. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Patricia Wallace. I also live in Talon Bay. My concern now is after hearing the presentation today, I would vote no, only because there's still, in my mind, too many variables not explored fully with the different sites. They discussed expansion. I know one of you brought up, building once and then going back and building again. With all the building that's going on over where the West Villages are, I would think at this point there's more room as opposed to tearing down all the vegetation and everything that's outside our gates. There's more room available out near the West Villages that have already been, I guess, flattened for the building. And from that perspective, I think there's more work that needs to be done, because in my mind, out there, it's going to be totally, you're going to have additional building in the next coming years, which here you're not. Here you're going to be structured to those 18 little acres, and out there, with all the building that's going on out there, you'll probably need more room out there, and you don't have an expansion at the Talon Bay site. So I think there needs to be more work looked at before a decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, when I
morning,
said,
Commissioners.
excuse me 1 second, sir. When I asked keep it to a minimum, I meant please don't clap. But we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Lou LaGoyce. I live at 8939 Eagle Bay Court in Talon Bay. Basically, I've been living there 13 years now, and when the community first started, we like to call it as a diamond in the rough. Nobody knew we were there. We didn't have any commercial traffic or anything like that. It was quiet. We didn't hear anything from 41 going back and forth, and we would like to keep it that way. Basically, when we purchased there, everybody was happy because of the secluded spot and also the distance that it was located into the woods, so to say. We liked it back there. We originally, with the developer Peter Ship, was supposed to put a monument out on 41 of Talon Bay. That wasn't even done. We still liked it. We didn't really want to advertise that we were there. We also have, in the mornings, afternoons, and in evenings, we do have residents of Talon Bay and also some visitors from La Casa Harbor Cove actually coming over and either cycling on our path, the sidewalk there, or actually walking, whether it's walking their dogs or whatever, which is very nice. Another thing that I noticed, we're all speaking here from our hearts today. I don't have any graphs or anything like that to show the board, but basically, looking at that diagram for Talon Bay, we were informed about 6 or 7 years ago that we all own a part of a little island that's right across from our yacht, our kayak area. Well, also, we also own a little lot in the front of our community. Before you have our perimeter wall, there is a guardhouse. If you look on the west side of the guardhouse, that has half of our tennis courts. If you look on the east side, if you look on the east side of Talon Bay, that is our tennis courts. On the west side, that is supposed to be the length of our perimeter fence or wall, and actually about 50 feet out. So if you could visualize it, there's a strip right there. We were told that that is our land and we could do what we want with it. And it was plans and talk at the time for storage, trailers, or anything like that. So according to the graphics that the gentleman just showed us, he's actually coming onto our property. He's going right up to that perimeter wall. That belongs to us. And if the commissioners can actually check with the Department of Buildings or whatever it has to be done, that belongs to us, and we're not selling it. We're keeping it. All right?
It is.
And like I said, We purchased here because it was secluded, quiet. We could have gone with the other developer up on Pan American, to Charleston Park, but we chose not to because we didn't want to be on a main road. We chose in there, and we enjoy it right there. And another thing is, all of us here, we're all taxpayers, and we're all paying our taxes, so we enjoy what we have. Don't give us a facility
Thank you, sir.
that we have traffic.
Thank you, sir. Time is up. All right, if we can't not clap, I'm going to clear the room. We have so many of these. We've got probably about 40 minutes worth of public comments, so we've got to get through them. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Record, or Record. I'm not sure how that's pronounced.
That's Record.
Oh, all right. And then Valenkunas. Is that pronounced right? And then
I'm Jay Record. I live in Talon Bay, and I want to thank you for listening to me.
Kathy Hood.
My major concern is, listening to the presentation, they're buying a small piece of property that they can't expand on, and the one on Pan American, as the city grows and you need to get it bigger, it's available. It's not available on Talon Bay. It's just what's there. Also, I listened to the thing about the traffic. If just the traffic we have now makes it dangerous for people to walk their dog, drive cars, ride their bicycles and walk their dogs now. If you add another 40 employees going in and out and people coming in there to pay their bills, it's going to be terrible. So I'm totally against it. I think a better way to look at it is why don't you put this, if you already own the property in West Villages and you have a place in Panacea, why don't you put the office at one of those, not on Pan American or not on Talon Bay? Just an idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Valenkunas.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Andres Valenciunas. I'm a resident of Talon Bay. My concern is that this will disrupt the traffic going in and out of our community. And I think I'm seeing that you have alternate sites, okay? That probably makes much more sense in your future as the city grows and expands. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hood.
Hi, my name is Kathy Hood, and I live in Talon Bay. And one of my main concerns is we have one way in and one way out. We do have a back gate, but that's the only way in and out of our development. And that if we have traffic and everything, it's people walking their dogs, riding their bikes. It will be dangerous with the traffic going in and out of there. At least our people know to go slow when you come up to the gate. I think it would be really, really detrimental to have that traffic where there's just really basically one entrance in and out, one road, and hardly any turnarounds. That if you have vans, you have anything attached to a car or anything like that that has to make that turn, are they going to come up to right before our gate to make the turn if they can't come directly out there? I think there's a lot of variables, and the expansion thing is also the same thing. There's very small area, and if you're looking to the future, I agree. You don't want to have something that you need to now, 5 years down the line, look at another property. So I just think taking all the vegetation down and everything, we're trying to preserve the natural beauty and to just take that down. And the only other thing I would like to say is, I know they're saying neighborhood friendly, but do they put that in writing, what they're going to do to preserve and have things that they say they're going to do for the neighborhood? My question is, down the line, are they really going to do that? Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, please, no. Dr. Frankson, Bill Yearn, and Leah Legati. Lee?
Hello, I'm Scott Frankson. Live in Talon Bay full-time, retired down here in July. I agree with the other comments that the other speakers talked about. The other thing is that from what I heard from one of the commissioners, that the city is 70,000 and they're looking at 250,000 at full build out. And so it seems less of an advantage to have an 18-acre tract that they can't expand in. I would agree with the other speaker that's, the Pan American tract is, you could buy more land and then you'd have for ability for expansion. But then if you already have some land in 2 other locations, like at West Villages, and I forget what the other place was that they mentioned, it would seem like you would, if you had to have another place besides West Villages, and what was that other spot? Oh, okay. Then why not utilize those? And then also the comment that one of the commissioners commented about earlier is that Talon Bay isn't as centrally located as somebody mentioned, that Heron Creek, which wasn't one of the final options, was more centrally located, and Pan American might be more advantageous in that respect. And then the other thing, of course, I'm sure we're all concerned about is effect on property values for a commercial development that comes in. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bill Fern, and my wife Nancy over there in the yellow. We have lived in Northport on Hawk Nest Lane in Talon Bay for, well, we bought 8 years ago. We've lived there full-time for nearly 5. We pay our taxes, we vote, we try to do most of the things that American citizens are supposed to do. And one of the things that we have enjoyed in our retirement is living in the Talon Bay community. It is a wonderful place. If y'all have never been by there, you ought to come by and take a look. It is really nice. And I'm not going to try to inundate you with things that have already been said, with things that make points, good points, reasons why we would prefer it not to be on Talon Bay Drive. The one thing I will tell you that I will add, I take my grandbabies out on those streets, on those sidewalks, to ride bikes, to walk, to enjoy all the things that are on Talon Bay Drive before you get to the Save-A-Lot, obviously. We really do appreciate the setting in which we live. We understand the need for things to be taken care of as far as the utilities program. We understand those things have to be built. We understand that progress goes forward. What we're asking you today is to take into consideration just how special that little drive is and think about me. I'm asking you to think about me out there with my grandbabies and would prefer not to have that traffic, would prefer not to have that there. That's all I'm asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Lee Ligeti, and I am a resident of Talon Bay since 2007, the summer of 2007. I will reiterate everything my neighbors have said. I do support everything that they say. My concern is I do not want it at all. I don't want the traffic. I don't want the noise. And it has not been mentioned, but on the corner to the entrance, there is a Save-A-Lot grocery store, which really generates a lot of traffic now. Across from Save-A-Lot, on the other corner, on the same side of 41, there's an empty lot, which recently, I understand, there was a racetrack that was proposed there. I don't know if that's still going to go through. I've been told that that was not going to happen. So if you're going to look to the future, we already have traffic from Save-A-Lot, and it's generating more and more traffic. If you're going to build this facility, excuse me, and have traffic from that facility, please consider also that there's an empty lot in front of the storage area, and the storage area generates traffic. So again, the peace and quiet of our community is ideal. So, and looking to the future, I also think that Panacea or Pan American would be a better choice. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you. Nancy Fearon, Jack Cork, and, sorry, I can't read the first name, Meyer.
Found him.
Oh.
I'm Nancy Fern from Talon Bay, and I just would like to add one thing, or maybe ask a question. I heard that you were going to have fuel storage on this facility. Am I wrong about that? I see you shaking your hands.
We can answer that whenever you're finished.
Okay, all right, that there would be fuel storage, and to me, that's not light industry. That's not what would be considered for aggression into a small subdivision that's pretty much landlocked. So that's all I'd like to add, just to consider that, what they're going to use that land for, and how that reflects into just our way of lives here in Northport. And we are on the far end of Northport as opposed to being pretty centrally located. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager's not here. Mr. Newkirk, could you respond to her question about the fuel?
Right now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes, there will be no fuel stored at that station. The facility will store, a few 5-gallon gas cans of fuel, no different than the average household that mows their own lawn, but there will be no bulk storage of any type of chemical or fuel at this facility.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Court.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Court, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Jack Court. First of all, compliment the presenters on the program today. That is very professionally done. Just a couple of thoughts about the traffic. It's been mentioned, and I will just simply say what they all said. But on the other hand, one point that I would like to bring up is the fact that the roadway, Talon Bay Drive, at this point already is breaking down. The roadway has been numerous times been patched and is not holding up particularly well. Adding what sounds like a fair volume of traffic to that roadway is not conducive to longevity to that road. Certainly the quiet of the neighborhood, I've been in Talon Bay now for about 5 years, and certainly enjoyed the isolation, so to speak. This is making a major change, and we would very much like to ask you to reconsider, especially given the fact that from the presentation, it sounded as if this location of the Talon Bay would mean a limitation on any future expansion where even, although I'm not a designer, that Pan American space was much larger would seem to give a lot more flexibility. So I would respectfully ask that you look very carefully at other alternatives rather than Talon Bay. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Meyer.
John Moyer, Talon Bay. I want to thank the council for listening to us, small group of people, before you make your vote. And to the utility supervisor and the other gentleman, you've done a lot of studies on the 30 or 40 trucks that are coming in after the building's been built. How about the big trucks that come in and the big equipment that comes in while the building is being built? With trailers, how are they going to turn around? And also the gentleman spoke of 50-year expansion. Well, if you're going to expand in 50 years, the way I look at it, you should buy more property because you know you have 50 years that you're going to have to do something, and property's not getting cheap, and property is getting scarce. And to me, it made more sense for city council to buy more property now for thinking about the future. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Charles Harrison, Ms. Laura Mueller, and a Mr. Dan Nixon.
My name's Charles Harrison. I live in Talon Bay. I've been there for approximately 8 years. It's a very nice community. I'm strictly against the building there on Talon Bay. One reason, I don't know if any of you's been on Talon Bay, but it's a very narrow road. It is not a wide road. And it is breaking down. Also, there's one way in and one way out. We're not going to open the gates to you and let you come through. So you're going to have to, if you make the wrong turn, you're going to have to come up, go around our circle at the guardhouse. That's wear and tear on our property. Are you going to pay to repair it? Or are we going to have to go the cost? Another thing, before you vote on this, I would like every one of you to take a drive down Talon Bay Drive and look at it. And look what might happen if you build there. And another, if you have land all the way up in the villages, why not use it? Why spend more money on land if you don't have to? I think also, I don't know how long you've been working on this project. I think you need to spend some more time on research before you step into it. Don't make a mistake that you'll be sorry for in 5 to 10 years down the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for your service.
Ms. Mueller?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Laura Mueller, and I happen to be president of the HOA for Talon Bay. First of all, I have to start this because I have to apologize to all the Talon Bay people that are here because I had heard a rumor that something may be coming down like this, and as you know by checking the minutes, I attend all the managers' meetings that they have for the president of the HOAs. And I asked that question, and I was told no. I went back to my fellow residents, and I told them that. So I'm apologizing because that's what I thought was right. And then Commissioner McDowell, I owe you a thank you. I was traveling this weekend with my granddaughter, and I opened my email that she sent me late Saturday evening and said, you might want to see this agenda. And so I got it Sunday evening. And I just want you to know how strong this community is because these people got the message Monday morning. And I myself started driving at 3 o'clock this morning to get here in time for this meeting. So this is only a small group. A lot of our people are traveling. And I would like you to, anybody in Talon Bay who is against this, just to raise your hand so they know, because not everybody spoke. Thank you. And that's what you get on the short notice. So if you do not make a decision today, we'd like you to postpone this and get more information. I reiterate everything they all said, and we would have been better organized at this if we had had time to sit down and talk to each other. Obviously, we saw each other as we came in the door this morning with different items. So it was their own personal thoughts that they had. I'm very concerned about the traffic, as they are as well. Different things that we're all concerned about. And I know it has to all go through rezoning, which seems like that was one of my key things, but it looks like all your other options also have to go through rezoning. So the one thing that Kathy Hood brought up, because of what happened earlier in this whole thing, that we thought this was not even an issue, how do we trust going forward if you decided to pick Talon Bay and they said this is going to be this wonderful thing? How do we as residents trust that? So please put yourself in our shoes at that point. And I thank you for listening, and to everyone, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. We have Dan Nixon, William Spalter, and Mr. Justin Willis.
Good morning. My name is Dan Nixon. I'm a resident at Talon Bay full-time. The entrance to our facility, our community, is off of 41. And as you travel that to our entrance gate, there's no businesses, there's nothing there but trees on both sides. Our community is concerned about the traffic that would be generated in the future. I, for one, am happy to see that the city is interested in that property, because we're going to have a single owner and a single person responsible for that property. And if the city is the person that's going to be held accountable, we'll have a fairly easy way to communicate in terms of getting anything that we're concerned about taken care of. I look at the future and see that's all commercial property. Traffic is an issue for our community, but having a strip mall there with 15 or 20 different owners, hundreds of people coming in to each facility, we have no idea what the traffic is going to be like. And we're talking about 2 entrances if the city takes that property. We could have 50 to 60 entrances for different commercial businesses along that property. And that's only on that side. I'm in favor, personally, of having one owner, one person to take care of that section of property, and the beautification in terms of removing a lot of the exotic plants and stuff and putting in a buffer, a pond, I think is perfectly adequate for that particular area. I think in the bigger picture, the community is going to grow, and then sooner or later, all of that property on both sides of Talon Bay Drive is going to be used. Right now, we're happy with the fact that nobody's using it except us. That's going to change, regardless of whether it's the city that takes over that property or commercial enterprises. I can imagine if you guys, right now, were considering petitions from 50 other businesses to develop that property. If you think these people are excited now, wait until you tell them how many people are going to come in there to the tattoo parlor, to the ice cream shop, and what have you. I'm in favor of having the city take that property over and use it accordingly. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Spalter?
Thank you. My name is William Spalter. I've been a resident of Talon Bay for a little bit over 10 years, retired engineer. The issue for me is industrialization coming to our borders. And it's not something that is inevitable. My perspective is somewhat parochial, since I'd like to see the environment remain the same as when I bought into the community. And largely it has so far. What I believe is at risk is the serenity that our residents enjoy, especially related to the drive into the community, the drive that will be severely impacted by the commercial industrialization that the town is considering. And the impact on wildlife, because our community is visited frequently by the wildlife that lives in that pocket and to the delight and joy of our residents. There is a concern that I have with regard to the overall growth of the city, which we all endorse and expect to happen, and that is the lack of centrality of the location that is under consideration at Talon Bay. While Stantec has done a credible job of looking at acquisition and startup costs, they have not mentioned the operational costs associated with running a utility facility. And that is the additional distances that the trucks will have to move throughout the city because we are not, or it is not planned to be centrally located. These are costs that impact our carbon footprint and our dollar book, the cost of additional gas in order to drive those trucks. So the consideration that I'd like you to focus on is the impact of this location over the build-out plan that the city has, and to assess whether or not it is ideally located. Finally, there are communities, neighboring communities, that are very concerned about noise pollution.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a great job. Mr. Willis.
Justin Willis, Mongai Road. The gentleman that was up here, the person before you, hit the nail right on the head. Listening to the conversation, the people in Talon Bay kind of have two choices. You guys can come together now that you know that the property is buyable. Come together and buy the land, and you can preserve it for the rest of the time you live there. If not, it's going to sell. Northport is growing, and as far as saying that it's not centrally located, it absolutely is. If you look at the fact that there are 5 miles of 41 frontage in the city, that is right smack dab in the middle of it. So it's not necessarily not centrally located within the city. Talking about putting it into West Villages, so because we don't want it near our gated community, we're going to send it to another gated community. We're basically shifting from one place to another. This is a way to preserve the area in front of your community and get it down to one owner. It's actually an advantage for your community if you look at the long-term effect of it. I personally, our city is growing. We're going to have 250,000 residents here. Every single lot in this city has already been sold. So I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm ready to reach out to some people about buying some property because we need skating rinks, we need movie theaters, we need things that these kids can do, and that area back there right next to a storage facility is a perfect spot to put it. So it's now that people are knowing that this land's up for sale, we're all going to be talking about it. So who do you want your neighbor to be? Do you want it to be the city, who's going to provide you with buffers, who's going to give you an opportunity to be a voice and be active in the development? Or do you want a developer like Benderson, who's going to come in and put what they want there? I live on the other side of the canal from Coco Plum. I wake up every single day listening to the noise of Coco Plum. I would much rather have this development sitting next to my house than the stores that are at Coco Plum. Please think this through from beginning to end of how this can actually benefit you in a positive way and use it to your advantage. Be a part of the development of this. Be a part of the design factor. Allow it to be done in a way that's going to benefit your area. Don't fight it. But in all honesty, we should be buying the 47 acres because that's where our advantage is. It gives us growth, not necessarily for this, but there's something else that we could be doing on this 47 acre plot. Our city needs to be developing a land bank, and it's time for us to get back to doing it now because all of this land isn't sold, and here we are trying to figure out how to stick it in to an 18 acre area. Granted, we only need 15 acres, but with growth, there is opportunity for more development. Thank you.
Mr. Willis. Wonderful. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10 to 15 minute break. We're having a little bit of issues with our devices here, so we're going to let IT take care of that.
Yes. Continue and do
Then we'll
motion,
come back,
and
we
we're
will
going to
continue
reach a
with this-
final,
with this agenda item.
final decision.
So we'll
Okay.
take a break for
So
15
hang
minutes.
tight.
Thank you.
10, 15 minutes.
feel like somebody robbed me.
Outliers, Talon Bay. So everybody says, "What time are we going to get out?" So I don't know. I got to get through Talon Bay. That's an outlier.
I didn't see it. It says city streets. Okay. Okay.
May have been used,
That could be a
may
little
have
bit
been
of
used as a magistrate's meeting or something.
I'm coming.
I don't think that was for you. I'm ready.
All right, yep, we're ready to get
I got
started.
the motion button to push.
I'm gonna let Vice Mayor has something she wants to.
Yeah, while we have everybody here with, that gave public comment, can we get a couple of the questions answered real quick? I don't think it'll take very much time. That way then they can walk out of here with full information. Would that be okay, Mayor?
Yeah, sure. I thought we answered one. I only heard one.
Yeah,
Was
well,
there more than one?
there was one about one way in, one way out, city manager. I thought there was a access off of.
There's a
There's
back
another
entrance.
access. I don't remember the name of the street. I'm drawing a blank. Sydney. Is that an emergency only access, sir, or is that a full access?
Do you guys know the answer to that question?
To our knowledge, the only clear and convincing access is on Talon Bay Drive. We did not extend that well beyond the site to look at other access options, so we had assumed that coming off 41, Talon Bay Drive was the primary and sole access for the purposes of our study.
So there is, though, a secondary access off Sydney?
Yes.
Okay, so that's cleared up. The chemical storage, is there going to be chemical storage on the facility?
He said no.
No, ma'am.
No, thank you. And the last one was, there are sidewalks along Talon Bay on both sides of the street, correct? So the safety of people walking and biking is there. It already exists on the sidewalks, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you
and
very
I would
much.
promote minimizing curb cuts and crossings on those sidewalks as well.
And this piece of property is not owned by Talon Bay? I looked the property
Ma'am, it's owned-
appraisers.
It's owned by an individual.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Mayor. I just wanted to clear up those little bits of questions.
Mr. Carson?
Yeah, I have just one quick question, and I think this might be for city manager. If we looked at the Pan American site, and we took that acreage that was considered environmentally, an environmental issue, where the gopher tortoises are and the wetlands are, and we did a environmental overlay of those particular areas, could we utilize monies from other accounts to purchase those parcels? Because
Should be able to do it as a park.
Well, realistically, we could do it anyway. If they were truly environmentally sensitive lands, it would open us up to additional funding sources. But right now, you could use utility money to buy this land.
Right.
You could use surtax money to buy the land. Realistically,
Right.
you could use general fund money to buy the land. If you had, like I say, if it was designated as environmentally sensitive, there might be grant monies that would be open up as well.
because isn't it sit right on that, the
Myakkahatchee Creek
the
corridor.
Myakkahatchee Creek
If you're looking
corridor?
at the money that we
So,
got from the DEP,
there you go.
it's possible, depends where those lands are, because that money was specific to that, but it's possible. I'm not gonna say yes or no.
I
but
know.
it's certainly possible.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Luke.
Move to direct staff to move forward on the negotiation to purchase the first rated property for the Utilities Administration and Warehouse Facility. If negotiations fail, recommend moving to negotiate with the second ranked property.
Do I have a second?
Is-
Be the 43,
So the first is.
107.
What's
Is
recommended.
Talon Bay.
Yep.
And the second option is Pan Am. Okay.
Yes.
Do I have a second? I will second that. Commissioner Luke.
I believe what we're looking at is the best for everything all around. The price can't beat. We have our facility sitting on 3 acres currently that we outgrew. For the expansion going into the future, they thought 10 to 15 acres. They're paying for 15, getting 18, so 3 is being given to them. So I think it addresses everything. The only thing that I would like to see further is after construction is complete, make sure Talon Bay Drive is put back in really good repair as a road.
Thank you. I would like to also say, you know, if we look at this plat developing, there's not going to be any control for the development per se. People are going to come in, they're going to build their restaurants, their bars, or whatever it is that goes in that section. This way, you're going to have, the city's going to develop a master plan for that area. You'll be able to see it, you'll be able to walk through the process of it. And I think it's going to be, I mean, this is going to sound backwards, but I think it'll be an amenity to the area due to the buffering, the lakes, and things like that. So I'm in favor of it being there. Commissioner Emmerich.
I'm not in favor of going with the Talon Bay process because of the fact is off of Pan American, we already have the wastewater plant. Off of Northport Boulevard, we have the water plant. That is all together, so if we ever had to store stuff, we've got both properties to work right out of there. It is an industrial compound to begin with. You're not really going to be interfering with any type of residential. We do have the opportunity to purchase the lands for environmental issues to where we can possibly use park money. We can save those wetlands. We can save those gopher tortoises. Utilities itself only needs 15 acres, but there's 47 acres available. We do have the opportunity to pick and choose to move that area around in there within reason, except for where the affordable housing's going. And in my opinion, it's more of an industrial-based area, and that's why I would go with the Pan Am site rather than the Talon Bay. But I will caution Talon Bay. I understand that they don't want this, but down the road, we don't have an opportunity to be their neighbor out there, and they would be up to getting whatever they got there coming in as construction. So I understand their concerns. That's where I'm at on that. I would like to see the facility on Pan Am, and for those reasons.
Commissioner Carousel?
So you've heard me say it over and over again. You spend 25 cents today to spend $50 10 years later. And I think there's a multitude of reasons why I support the Pan American site. First and foremost is that you'll be able to utilize other funds and possibly even grant money in order to purchase this. And I'm talking the whole parcel. And you can actually look at the future and use some of that acreage for future positioning, but also to prevent the development of those areas that have the gopher tortoises and the wetlands. So I think it's kind of a 2-for-1. The other thing is that, you have the ability to be right there on 41 within an instant, and you have an ability to get to City Hall for the things that you need to utilize City Hall for. I mean, just because there's an office here for utilities doesn't mean someone's not running to City Hall every day to pick up the mail in the mailbox, come in here for plans, come in here for site. I mean, I just think it's a smarter choice. As I said, growth is pretty much something that is always in the back of my mind. I think that while there's 40-something acres here, and I hear that there's 7 acres that are under negotiation or a conversation, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen. And so, I would like to see us make sure that we go forward with the entire acreage. And if it's only 40 of the 47 or only 42 of the 47, then so be it. But I do believe that we have a right-of-way out on outreach also that will allow us access. And it abuts the Myakkahatchee corridor, which, again, the environmentally sensitive lands would help with. Location, location, location. And I think that's about it. I mean, you know, I get Talon Bay was one of those choices that just seemed to be workable. And believe it or not, I feel bad for not choosing Talon Bay. And I'll tell you why. Because I do believe that ultimately that land is going to be developed. And it's going to be a matter of be careful what you wish for, because there is going to be a big difference between what you may get and the 40 possible employees that will only be there once or twice a day. So I'm a little concerned about that, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For the greater good of the city of Northport, I truly believe that the location on Pan American is the smartest, wisest way to utilize the money.
Thank you. I have no other, go ahead, Vice.
I'm sorry, my little withdrawal, it's not working, so I do apologize. I would like to.
You gotta refresh it.
Yeah, I had to.
But go ahead, I got you
Okay,
now.
there.
Vice Mayor McDowell, I see your name up here.
All right. First off, it is ironic, quite ironic, that I am sitting on this side when 5 to 7 years ago, I was one of you folks sitting out there. I had many concerns when the Dollar General was being built at Cranberry and Price. I had it's going to affect my property values, the noise, the light, the everything. I learned that there's nothing I could do about that. And if there's any message I can convey to the citizens, if I may, Mayor, is that, like Commissioner Carasone said, be careful what you wish for. If you don't want us, you may get something 100 times more egregious, great word, than a city's yard. And that's all it is a yard. There's going to be just, pickup trucks, maybe vans, cars going in and out of there twice a day, as opposed to the racetrack that could be built on that property 24/7, people hopping fences, people trying to break in and stuff like that. So I feel what you guys are going through. I understand that. As far as the property out at Pan American, I've heard about wetlands, I've heard about gopher tortoises, I've heard about 7 acres possibly being sold. And I see a parcel that is already cut up. How many acres will add to that cutting up? How many acres are the wildlife areas, the wetland areas, and what would be the total area that we could build on? Because I'm looking at this, and it's a hodgepodge to begin with, and then you carve out the wetlands and you carve out the gopher tortoises. What's left to build on?
They said, they answered that question. What was it?
15 acres.
Probably 10 to 15 acres would be carved out.
Carved out.
Wetland.
Wetland and gopher tortoise.
Can somebody from staff possibly confirm, please?
Because that was one of my questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to double.
If you'll
fact,
give me a
we had
couple
the
minutes,
aerial.
what I can do is I can take a look at the environmental resource permit, check and see if the acreages for the wetlands are on there, so we can at least kind of sub that out from the total. So if you will bear with me a moment.
I would appreciate that
Oh,
because
when was that permit done, though?
The permit has expired. I think it was, you know what, I don't want to misspeak. But the permit on both parcels, the environmental resource permit has expired.
they have to be redone, correct?
Yes. I just
But
wanted
it gives
to
you an
know.
idea. of
Well, yeah, because
a relative
wetlands
idea.
change, so it may not be that many, and it may not be accurate now.
Just a general idea.
Either I'm getting a lot older or the print is getting a lot smaller, or maybe
Oh, do you want my
both.
cheaters?
So the exhibit I have is not terribly readable, but I'm going to tell you, based on the overall size of the property, there's a wetland to the right of Children's Way as you come in. It appears to be somewhere in the area of 2 to 3 acres. There are 2 wetlands that are jurisdictional, identified back by the creek. That looks like another 1 to 2 acres. There's a small piece of wetland that encroaches on that 7-acre piece that we talked about a little bit earlier. So I'm going to give you a rough guesstimate that we're looking at somewhere in the area of 4 to maybe 5 acres of wetlands. The gopher tortoise area is a little bit different. It is along the creek as well, and it has not been quantified with a boundary per se, but it probably encompasses another 1 to 2 acres. And so those are my best estimates based on my age and my survey.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. So thank you for that.
The math I come up with is there are approximately 33 acres left out there of buildable area.
Minus the 7 that may or may not be sold.
Minus the 7 and minus the wetlands and minus the tortoises.
Yes, sir.
I did mention in the report, there is a higher likelihood of floodplain compensation on this piece than on the Talon Bay piece, in proximity to the creek as well. And that is acreage that it gets chewed up because you are required to store far more water on your site for floodplain compensation, sometimes doing as much as 50% or 100% more water management. Water management in this area typically is 15 to 20% of your total site, no matter what site you're on. But that could almost double depending on the degree of floodplain compensation. There is the space to accommodate it, but it does remove your net developable acreage. And that's why we cited it in the report.
But they account for those wetlands as part of that requirement as well. So that will be minused out in your percentage. And then, so when you said 10 to 15 acres, 10 acres is probably more like it overall. If you add the 5 acres of the environmental impacts, another 5 acres of, say, water management impacts, you're talking about 10 acres removed from the 47.11.
And minus potentially the 7 that are under contract.
And yes, so at the very least, you're talking 30 acres still.
In that area. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I would be more inclined on the surface of going with the Pan American site, but because it's so cut up, I don't think there's any expansion possible to do anything in the future. I do that.
Can you show me where you see the cut-up part? I don't understand what you mean by the cut-up part.
Where all the wetlands are and the gopher tortoises and stuff, and all I have is this little teeny tiny map.
Oh, I was looking at the aerial on my computer. That's the different, because that is way old, way old.
So, this is a difficult decision, but I'm sure that either way, I know the citizens, regardless if it's going to be a utility area or if it's going to be something else much more adverse. So thank you very much for the great presentation, too.
Wonderful. Let's take the vote.
Can you restate it, please?
Yes. City Clerk, can you please restate the motion as you see it?
Provide staff direction to move forward on the negotiation to purchase the first ranked property, which is Talon Bay, for the Utilities Administration and Warehouse Facility. If negotiations fail, recommend moving to negotiate with the second ranked property, Pan American.
Thank you. Take the vote. And that passes 3-2 with Commissioner Emmerich and Commissioner Carasone dissenting. Commissioner Emmerich, you have any reason for that or for reasons stated?
Stated.
Okay, we're moving on. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
So to clarify, it's Talon Bay.
To clarify, we did approve Talon Bay. Okay. Now, would we like to take a lunch break before we move on?
Oh, can we hear public comment before we do?
I'm sorry. Let me do that. We do have some public comment here.
That one canceled.
Eat something. I don't know when I ate last. I've been a bachelorette for 3 weeks.
This one, she would like this to be shown at the same time I turn to the city clerk, and that's not possible. But we can make, but we can make copies of whatever those are distributed, so you might want to make that announcement.
I don't think he'll be pulling the tapes unless
Yeah,
I tell him,
I
so.
doubt it, yeah.
Guess you're buying lunch.
We are going to handle, I've got 4 public comments. Oh, sorry. I do have 4 public comments. We'll rush through, we won't rush. We'll give you 3 minutes through these, and then we'll take our lunch. First, I have Miss Alice White. I do have a disc, but I was informed that we cannot show the disc at the same time as the public comment. So, Miss White? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the talking echoes pretty loud in this room. Yes, ma'am.
Alice White, Froud Street, and I have to say it's really good to be here on a Tuesday morning. I wonder how I can do that.
Are
I
you
must
on
be
spring break?
retired. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Alice White, I'm a chair of People for Trees, as you know, since 1997, and I'm here. I gave you a CD, but they said they can't put the pictures up at the same time the timer's up. So I'm hoping you can look at those pictures because I love using pictures. They're worth 1,000 words. Because I've just been really, really disheartened lately about the lack of respect for our environment. There was a time, believe it or not, I thought maybe things started to change a little bit. I was actually like, those trees that went in, they're actually coming into their own, and those landscaping plans that we talked about 25, 30 years ago, they're coming into their own. Now, and then I find that they're just all being taken away, and it's just really, really discouraging to see that. And that's what those pictures will show you. I know of all the tree protection committees that I served on, they talked about balance. Alice, you have to have balance. You can't keep every tree. And we've never been about keeping every tree on a site. We know you have to remove trees for development. But the understanding was we're going to take everything off this parcel, but we're going to replant. And they're going to come back, and we're going to have your 35% canopy. And like I said, for a while I was actually starting to see that, but that's not happening. These replants, and they even talked about it with this facility. They're going to put this buffer. That's great, but only if those plants and trees actually survive and they get to that point. There doesn't seem to ever be, there isn't a constant follow-up on these things happening. And that's what I'm really discouraged about. And that's what those pictures will show you. There was somebody up here talking that he lived behind the cocoa plum. Yes, behind the cocoa plum, they planted East Palaca holly trees. They also planted them in the front. These are the trees that unfortunately I see that they shape them like cone heads. It's just what they look like. They were given a value, a canopy value, as a medium shade tree, which means they're supposed to canopy and give shade. By shaping them like this, you're not getting that. So the promise that we're given that this is going to give you your canopy isn't happening. And then one of the pictures has those hollies behind the cocoa plum, and half of them are dead. Yes, because that is such a terrible thing to do to a tree. And I imagine they're not going to be replanted. So, I just want to leave you with, really thinking about when we're going to say we're going to do something, then do it. Then there has to be something in place to be sure that's followed up, and we are going to have that 35% canopy that we're promised.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Ms. White.
So when you have time, look at those pictures.
Thank you. We'll have...
Fair. Oh, yes.
I'll have,
I did invite all of you to our annual tree fair on the 27th, and I'm hoping to see you there.
I'll have
Okay?
staff make some copies of this. And
All right. Thanks.
Yes.
Where is the, we have more.
Okay. I apologize. I'm very poor at this, but I want to recognize our previous commissioner, Linda Yates, has been here for a little bit. I told her I would do that, and then I forgot again, because that's what I do. Too many squirrels run around here and take my attention. But Ms. Yates, I have you next. Thank you for coming. Ms. Fisher, and then I have Mr. Duval.
Mr. Duval had to leave.
Left. Yep, I don't see her.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Good to see you all again, and charter officers as well. I do have to leave. I'd love to spend the day with you, but I do have to leave. So I wanted to just talk about two ordinances. One is the 2019-10 and 2019-11, having to do with the community gardens and commercial or urban markets. The first thing I just would say on the community residential areas and everything, I think that one needs more of a workshop conversation because there's many unintended consequences that I can just share with you. We've been kind of battling with the state in regards to vacation rentals and the infiltration that has in neighborhood community areas. And I think there's some of those similar concerns in the way that community garden ordinance is written that actually would introduce those same, very same concerns we're trying to convince the state to not preempt us in that area. The other is the urban market gardens, which, as you know, it was almost a year ago that I presented that conversation, that item, to really move the city forward in innovative, creative, 21st century business applications. And that was really, it's not for one individual that I know we all have heard from, but it was one individual inspiring the ideas of where we are in the 21st century and what we as a city really have, I think, a benefit to many others as far as allowing these types of things in our community for the benefit of our community, which is really an economic driver. And I will tell you that the biggest obstacle to economic development is really uncertainty, the governmental uncertainty with regulations. And that's why in that ordinance, the way it's proposed, I can tell you, I went through and probably struck out everything in there from the size, dimensions, that there are just so many things that are put on that type of new business that they're going to be subject to those other business regulations within that district that you allow it for. So no reason to really get into that minutia nitty-gritty because it will be regulated. The only thing this opens it up to is allowing it in those districts. And as far as the word pilot, I don't like that because for business and economic development, that's a clear, I'm not even going to go there. Rather than using that terminology of pilot program, narrow your scope, narrow the applicability, make it, to where you allow it in certain activity centers, but make it maybe neighborhood commercial area. So you're starting with it in a certain area, but that business doesn't have to worry in the future that we're going to say, okay, we don't want you anymore. So I'm available between first reading and second reading. Love to talk to you more about it. As always, 3 minutes is not enough to get into all of the nitty-gritty. But thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Thank you. It's nice to see you all again. For the record, my name is Nancy Fisher. I live at 1038 North Step Street. I'm here again about price. And the reason why I'm here is that I attended the public meeting on the 21st. I was surprised to see no safety islands and no mid-block crosswalks, which were asked for by the commission during discussions about the design. An initial response from staff that was shared with me said that it wasn't part of the final motion. So I'm a little confused as to how that got dropped off, because to me it was something that was to allay the fears of pedestrians in the area, that this very broad avenue, all asphalt, would be designed as safe to cross. So I looked into this design a little bit further, and what I discovered is that in the continuous two left turns design, it's not supposed to be in a road where there's more than 12 driveways per mile. That's 440-foot spacing. You don't have that on Price. What happens is you wind up with all the cars in constant conflict as everybody's trying to turn into their driveways or passing somebody. It just creates more accident points. You wind up creating a suicide lane and an accident alley with this kind of design. It's not as safe as the addition of raised medians and exclusive turn lanes, particularly in high-volume roadways of 20,000 cars or more. This is a importance because one of the reasons why alternate designs were dismissed was because the high volume of cars on this road, which is 17 or 21, depending on which count you take. You need to consider pedestrian and bicyclist crossing movements, the potential need for refuge areas. There's no refuge areas. Staff presented some refuge areas in the middle of bridges. I don't see those as potentially valuable to pedestrians on the roadway. Mr. Lear, I think, has this response from staff that he can share with you, but I also brought up additional points in a subsequent email, so I hope that all of this can be addressed. Police are going to be needed on the boulevard to enforce this two-lane turn lane. It's just not a workable design. People are going to use it for through traffic. They're going to use it for passing. It's going to create more opportunities for conflict and accidents. I see a very unsafe road being designed. I'm asking for the commission to go back what Commissioner Carasone said, which was to do it right the first time. That may require you to go back and take a look at the safety in the design that you approved and take another look to assure that the safety of pedestrians and all users of the road, vehicles as well as pedestrians, are being addressed in this design.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Wonderful. Okay, we are going to take a 45-minute lunch break.
She want to speak to something?
What?
Yeah, did you want
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
The 5J, the DeFi allocation, so they don't have to come back? I mean,
Where are we? Where are we?
Resolutions? Is that,
No, it's the consent
Agenda item.
5J.
oh, I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say. This,
Yeah,
this-
sorry. 5J.
Do you want to do consent agenda entirely?
No, 5J, because you guys pulled like 4 things, so just 5J and get it over with. Let's go to lunch and be done.
Okay. Do I need a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Carasone, seconded by Vice Mayor. I heard first. So let's take a vote. And it passes unanimously. 5J, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is 5J, is the disposition of the fixed assets, specific, mostly vehicles. One of the items on there is for the donation of a vehicle to Project Graduation. I'm just going to open it up to, if you have more questions, we'll answer them.
I thought there was a second one for another.
And there is, sorry about that. I was trying to get it open as, that was not in the order that I had it going. So yes, there's also the donation to the Suncoast Technical College Law Enforcement Academy as well. Both of those donations are a Ford F-150 pickup trucks. Thank you. I didn't get it open in time.
Commissioner Liu.
Yeah, I had asked it to be pulled, and just so that we could recognize DeFi and talk about the donation. I think both of them are excellent donations, so I don't know if DeFi wants to speak to this. Is that all right, Mayor?
Can we fill out a card? Mm-hmm.
Probably fill it out after they speak.
Yeah.
If you want to go ahead and speak, yeah, you can fill it out once you finish.
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Kristen Cawthorn. I am a co-chair of Project Graduation.
I am Lori File. I am also co-chair of Project Graduation, and I am the director of the Drug Free Youth here in Northport.
We wanted to thank you. The last 3 years, the city has been generous enough to donate vehicles, and all 3 years, the kids, I'm going to get very emotional, very bad weekend. I have a new fire in my belly because of the accident that happened. We lost a student, and so therefore, we are very, very prideful in making sure this one night that these kids get what they need. And I know it's a 10-year-old vehicle, but to these kids, it means a lot. The last 3 years, every one of the students that have received the vehicle have put it to very good use. Last year especially, I'm very proud of this gentleman. He was going into the Navy, and we had the discussion of what kid would want an F-150 truck. He was going into diving lessons. And so it worked out perfectly that he was able to put his gear into the back of the truck. So when he went into the service, into the Navy, that he had his certification, and it bumped him up to be further along. So our Northport students are representing us and protecting us. So for that, I thank you. And whew, this is why I do this, because the kids are my life. So, and we like to keep them free of drugs and alcohol so we don't have a repeat of this past weekend.
Exactly.
I just want to say that DeFi has been a supporter of Project Graduation for many years now. And among all of the other wonderful things that Project Graduation does, this car donation is a huge draw for the kids to actually be there. So for them to have that, whatever we can do to get them there, doesn't matter what it takes to get them there, as long as we get them there and keep them safe. And
And they do sign a contract saying that they know walking in the door that they have to be drug and alcohol free. And trust me, I've already talked with both the fire department and police department that they are able to help us that night, because we already have 190 kids signed up. Nice. And I know after this weekend and after we're going to go into the schools even with a heavier force over these next couple of weeks, that we're going to have a massive, massive turnout this year. So,
Congratulations,
Thank you.
ladies. That's beautiful.
sorry.
Yeah, Vice Mayor McDowell.
Yeah, I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, let me move on because I've got some questions.
Okay, I didn't
Stay
realize.
up there, ladies, for a second.
You guys can stay up here.
Yes, please. Commissioner Carrison.
I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to be very clear that we've been doing this way more than 3 years. That this has been well over a 10-year program that we implemented back in the very first Project Graduation when we had it at YMCA. And that it had a very small window where they did not provide for the vehicles, where we found an alternate means anyways. But this is something that makes this job worthwhile, you know, the cool stuff like this versus the hollering. So just to kind of put on the record that we're proud of you guys. Because you're the ones who are doing the work.
Absolutely.
And you're the ones who are bringing in the people and the kids, and you're the ones who are promoting it to a point where you will save a life. You will.
And I
And
will
there's
say-
no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
The businesses of Northport have stepped up in full force every year. And we've only been doing this is our 4th year. So thank you to the city, but thank you to the businesses also. Because
Absolutely.
they don't question us when we send out our letters asking for donations, they just give.
Well, and that's the beauty of Northport.
That's right.
Commissioner Emmons.
Yeah, I know, this has been going on for a long time. It's always been a big piece of my wife's life. She goes out there every year. She looks forward to it. She can work all day, volunteer all night,
Nice to
come
suck
home and
me
go,
in.
yeah, I'm gonna get an hour's worth of sleep. No, you're not. You're gonna go start running again, but we enjoy that. I just wanted to ask you, how are your volunteers and chaperones coming? Are you good with that? Do you need more? Can we put some word out to see if we can get some more chaperones?
We could always use more.
Okay.
The more the merrier. I mean, we always make do with what we have, but we could always use more.
Well, my wife and I will definitely be there this year for sure. I don't know about Vanessa, if we want to have her tag along or not.
I won't be in town, but trust me, I would have.
She would have been there.
I would have been there if it wasn't for that.
But whenever I see your information, I'll share it on my Facebook, and we'll see whatever we can get out there for you, and whatever other kinds of help we can, because it is a great institution for our children, and it's a safe night. And it's fun. I know they all have a blast. So thank you very much for what you do.
Vice Mayor McDowell, you had a motion?
I am proud to make this motion to approve the distribution of the assets to the Northport High School graduation, project graduation, and to the STC Law Enforcement Academy.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor
Third, fourth,
by
and
the
fifth.
Vice Mayor. I have it seconded by Commissioner Luke. Second vote?
Can
Oh.
I speak to
Oh,
the
yeah, I'm
motion?
sorry, yeah.
Yeah. I love Project Graduation. My son, our sons participated in Project Graduation, and it was really not by their choice. I said, you have to do this, and because I know what happens at graduation. I grew up in a time where that wasn't an option of a safe place to go and enjoy your last time with your friends. So I really appreciate everything that you guys do for our youth and for our community. And thank you. So,
Commissioner Luke?
the tears come to me because of your passion, and I thank you for that.
Take the vote.
That passes unanimously.
Shocker.
We will return after lunch at 1:20.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That would be repeat.
We do need to get, this has to